or the thing already loosed in the heavens. A translation by Charles B. Williams here reads, "Whatever you forbid on earth must be what is already forbidden in heaven, and whatever you permit on earth must be what is already permitted in heaven." Greek scholar Robert Young's literal translation reads, "Whatever thou mayest bind upon the earth shall be having been bound in the heavens, and whatever thou mayest loose upon the earth shall be having been loosed in the heavens." Since other texts make clear that the resurrected Jesus remained the one true head over the Christian congregation, it is obvious that his promise to Peter did not mean Peter's dictating to heaven what should or should not be loosed, but, rather, Peter's being used as heaven's instrument in the unlocking, or loosing, of certain determined things. 5. Jehovah Hova, the causative form, the imperfect state, of the Heb. Verb, ha-y become. Meaning he causes to become. The personal name of God. Isra 42. 8. 54. 5. Though scripturally designated by such descriptive titles as God, Sovereign Lord, Creator, Father, the Almighty, and the Most High, his personality and attributes, who and what he is, are fully summed up and expressed only in this personal name. PS 83. 18. Correct pronunciation of the divine name. Jehovah is the best known English pronunciation of the divine name, although Yahweh is favored by most Hebrew scholars. The oldest Hebrew manuscripts present the name in the form of 4 consonants, commonly called the tetragrammaton from Greek to Middle Dotra, meaning 4, and gramma, letter. These 4 letters written from right to left are and may be transliterated into English as Yor, JHVH. The Hebrew consonants of the name are therefore known. The question is, which vowels are to be combined with those consonants? Vowel points did not come into use in Hebrew until the second half of the first millennium CE. See Hebrew, 2 Hebrew alphabet and script. Furthermore, because of a religious superstition that had begun centuries earlier, the vowel pointing found in Hebrew manuscripts does not provide a key for determining which vowels should appear in the divine name. Superstition hides the name. At some point a superstitious idea arose among the Jews that it was wrong even to pronounce the divine name represented by the tetragrammaton. Just what basis was originally assigned for discontinuing the use of the name is not definitely known. Some hold that a name was viewed as being too sacred for imperfect lips to speak. Yet the Hebrew scriptures themselves give no evidence that any of God's true servants ever felt any hesitancy about pronouncing his name. Non-biblical Hebrew documents, such as the so-called Lachish letters, show the name was used in regular correspondence in Palestine during the latter part of the 7th century BCE. Another view is that the intent was to keep non-Jewish peoples from knowing the name and possibly misusing it. However, Jehovah himself said that he would have his name declared in all the earth. Acts 9. 16. Compare 1 ch 16. 23, 24. PS 113. 3. Al 1. 11. 14, to be known even by his adversaries. Isra 64. 2. The name was in fact known and used by pagan nations both in pre-Common Era times and in the early centuries of the Common Era. The Jewish Encyclopedia, 1976, Volume 12, p. 119. Another claim is that the purpose was to protect the name from use in magical rites. If so, this was poor reasoning, as it is obvious that the more mysterious the name became through disuse, the more it would suit the purposes of practices of magic. When did the superstition take hold? Just as the reason or reasons originally advanced for discontinuing the use of the divine name are uncertain, so, too, there is much uncertainty as to when this superstitious view really took hold. Some claim that it began following the Babylonian exile 607-537 BCE. This theory, however, is based on a supposed reduction in the use of the name by the later writers of the Hebrew Scriptures, a view that does not hold up under examination. Malachi, for example, was evidently one of the last books of the Hebrew Scriptures written in the latter half of the 5th century BCE, and it gives great prominence to the divine name. Many reference works have suggested that the name ceased to be used by about 300 BCE. Evidence for this date supposedly was found in the absence of the tetragrammaton, or a transliteration of it in the Greek Septuagint translation of the Hebrew Scriptures, begun about 280 BCE. It is true that the most complete manuscript copies of the Septuagint now known do consistently follow the practice of substituting the Greek words Kyrie os Lord or the os o text to acute muritra longo, Jehovah 6 Inventory No. 266. Picture, Volume 1, p. 326. It regularly presents the Tetragrammaton, written in square Hebrew characters, in each case of its appearance in the Hebrew text being translated. This papyrus is dated by scholars as being from the 1st century BCE, and thus it was written 4 or 5 centuries earlier than the manuscripts mentioned previously. C&W Appendix, pages 1562 to 1564. When did the Jews in general actually stop pronouncing the personal name of God? So, at least in written form, there is no sound evidence of any disappearance or disuse of the divine name in the BCE period. In the 1st century CE there first appears some evidence of a superstitious attitude toward the name. Josephus, a Jewish historian from a priestly family, when recounting God's revelation to Moses at the site of the burning bush, says, "Then God revealed to him his name, which ere then had not come to men's ears, and of which I am forbidden to speak." Jewish Antiquities, 2, 276-12, for Josephus' statement, however, besides being inaccurate as to knowledge of the divine name prior to Moses, is vague and does not clearly reveal just what the general attitude current in the 1st century was as to pronouncing or using the divine name. The Jewish Mishnah, a collection of rabbinic teachings and traditions, is somewhat more explicit. Its compilation is credited to a rabbi known as Judah the Prince, who lived in the 2nd and 3rd centuries CE. Some of the Mishnaic material clearly relates to circumstances prior to the destruction of Jerusalem and its temple in 70 CE. Of the Mishnah, however, one scholar says, "It is a matter of extreme difficulty to decide what historical value we should attach to any tradition recorded in the Mishnah. The lapse of time which may have served to obscure or distort memories of times so different. The political upheavals, changes, and confusions brought about by 2 rebellions and 2 Roman conquests. The standards esteemed by the Pharisee party, whose opinions the Mishnah records which were not those of the Sadducean party. These are factors which need to be given due weight in estimating the character of the Mishnah's statements. Moreover, there is much in the contents of the Mishnah that moves in an atmosphere of academic discussion pursued for its own sake, with so it would appear little pretense at recording historical usage. The Mishnah, translated by H. Danby, London, 1954, pages 14, 15. Some of the Mishnaic traditions concerning the pronouncing of the divine name are as follows. In connection with the annual Day of Atonement, Danby's translation of the Mishnah states, "And when the priests and the people which stood in the temple court heard the expressed name come forth from the mouth of the high priest, they used to kneel and bow themselves and fall down on their faces and say, Blessed be the name of the glory of his kingdom forever and ever." Yom 6. 2 of the daily priestly blessings, Sota 7. 6 says, "In the temple they pronounced the name as it was written, but in the provinces by a substituted word." Sanhedrin 7. 5 states that a blasphemer was not guilty unless he pronounced the name, and that in a trial involving a charge of blasphemy a substitute name was used until all the evidence had been heard. Then the chief witness was asked privately to say expressly what he had heard, presumably employing the divine name. Sanhedrin 10. 1, in listing those that have no share in the world to come, states. Abbasol says, "Also he that pronounces the name with its proper letters." Yet, despite these negative views, one also finds in the first section of the Mishnah the positive injunction that o text to acute miritra longo, Jehovah 7 Hebrew scriptures. In later copies, the reader, of course, found the Tetragrammaton completely replaced by Kyrie os and the os. See Lord. Translations into other languages, such as the Latin Vulgate, followed the example of these later copies of the Greek Septuagint. The Catholic Douay version of 1609 to 1610 in English, based on the Latin Vulgate, therefore does not contain the divine name, while the King James Version 1611 uses Lord or God in capital and small capitals to represent the Tetragrammaton in the Hebrew Scriptures, except in 4 cases. What is the proper pronunciation of God's name? In the second half of the first millennium CE, Jewish scholars introduced a system of points to represent the missing vowels in the consonantal Hebrew text. When it came to God's name, instead of inserting the proper vowel signs for it, they put other vowel signs to remind the reader that he should say Adho-Na meaning sovereign lord or Elo-Him meaning God. The Codex Leningrad B19a, of the 11th century CE vowel points the tetragrammaton to read Ua, Ui, and Iho-Wa. Ginsburg's edition of the Masoretic text vowel points the divine name to read Iho-Wa. GE 3. 14. FT and Hebrew scholars generally favor Yahweh as the most likely pronunciation. They point out that the abbreviated form of the name is Yahweh in the Latinized form, as at Psalm 89. 8 and in the expression Ha-Leluya meaning praise Jah, your people. PS 104. 35. 150. 1. 6 also, the forms Iho, Yo, Yah, and Yahu, found in the Hebrew spelling of the names Jehoshaphat, Joshaphat, Shaphatia, and others, can all be derived from Yahweh. Greek transliterations of the name by early Christian writers point in a somewhat similar direction with spellings such as I-B and I-L-E, which, as pronounced in Greek, resemble Yahweh. Still, there is by no means unanimity among scholars on the subject, some favoring yet other pronunciations, such as Yahuwah, Yahuwah, or Yahuwah. Since certainty of pronunciation is not now attainable, there seems to be no reason for abandoning in English the well-known form Jehovah in favor of some other suggested pronunciation. If such a change were made, then, to be consistent, changes should be made in the spelling and pronunciation of a host of other names found in the scriptures. Jeremiah would be changed to Jeremiah, Isaiah would become Yesha-Yahu, and Jesus would be either Iho-Shua as in Hebrew or I-E-Sus as in Greek. The purpose of words is to transmit thoughts. In English the name Jehovah identifies the true God, transmitting this thought more satisfactorily today than any of the suggested substitutes. Excerpts from the Psalms, Dead Sea Scroll. The tetragrammaton appears repeatedly in distinctive ancient Hebrew characters. Jehovah. Importance of the name. Many modern scholars and Bible translators advocate following the tradition of eliminating the distinctive name of God. They not only claim that its uncertain pronunciation justifies such a course, but also hold that the supremacy and uniqueness of the true God make unnecessary his having a particular name. Such a view receives no support from the inspired scriptures, either those of pre-Christian times or those of the Christian Greek scriptures. The tetragrammaton occurs 6,828 times in the Hebrew text printed in Biblia Hebraica and Biblia Hebraica Stuttgartenser. In the Hebrew scriptures the New World Translation contains the divine name 6,979 times, because the translators took into account, among other things, the fact that in some places the scribes had replaced the divine name with Adho-Na or Elo-Him. CNW Appendix, pages 1561, 1562. The very frequency of the appearance of the name attests to its importance to the Bible's author, whose name it is. Its use throughout the scriptures far outnumbers that of any of the titles, such as Sovereign Lord or God, apply to him. Noteworthy, also, is the importance given to names themselves in the Hebrew scriptures and among Semitic peoples. Professor G. T. Manley points out, a study of the word name in the Old Testament reveals how much it means in Hebrew. The name is no mere label, but is significant of the real personality of him to whom it belongs. When a person puts his name upon a thing or another person, the latter comes under his influence and protection. New Bible Dictionary, edited by J. D. Douglas, 1985, p. 430. Compare Everyman's Talmud, by A. Cohen, 1949, p. 24. GE 27. 36. 1 25. 25. PS 20. 1. PR 22. 1. See name. God and Father not distinctive. The title God is neither personal nor distinctive. One can even make a God of his belly. PHP 3. 19. In the Hebrew scriptures the same word Elo-Him is applied to Jehovah, the true God, and also to false gods, such as the Philistine god Dagon JG 16. 23, 24. 1 5. 7 and the Assyrian god Nisroch. 2K 19. 37 For a Hebrew to tell a Philistine or an Assyrian that he worshipped God Him would obviously not have sufficed to identify the person to whom his worship went. In its articles on Jehovah, the Imperial Biblia Dictionary nicely illustrates the difference between Him God and Jehovah. Of the name Jehovah, it says, it is everywhere a proper name, denoting the personal God in him only. Whereas Elohim partakes more of the character of a common noun, denoting usually, indeed, but not necessarily nor uniformly, the supreme. The Hebrew may say the Elohim, the true God, in opposition to all false gods. But he never says the Jehovah, for Jehovah is the name of the true God only. He says again and again my God, but never my Jehovah, for when he says my God, he means Jehovah. He speaks of the God of Israel, but never of the Jehovah of Israel, for there is no other Jehovah. He speaks of the living God, but never of the living Jehovah, for he cannot conceive of Jehovah as other than living. Edited by P. Fairbairn, London, 1874, Volume I, p. 856. The same is true of the Greek term for God, Theos. It was applied alike to the true God and to such pagan gods as Zeus and Hermes, Roman Jupiter and Mercury. Compare Act 14. 11-15. Presenting the true situation of Paul's words at 1 Corinthians 8. 4-6. For even though there are those who are called gods, whether in heaven or on earth, just as there are many gods and many lords, there is actually to us one God the Father, out of whom all things are, and we for him. The belief in numerous gods, which makes essential that the true God be distinguished from such, has continued even into this 21st century. Paul's reference to God the Father does not mean that the true God's name is Father, for the designation Father applies as well to O textoi acute muritra longo, Jehovah 9 not also of people of the nations. Yes, of people of the nations also. Row 3. 29 Jehovah is not only the God of the whole earth Issa 54. 5 but also the God of the universe, the maker of heaven and earth. PS 124. 8 Jehovah's covenant with Abraham, nearly 2,000 years earlier than Paul's day, had promised blessings for people of all nations, showing God's interest in all mankind. GE 12. 1-3. Compare 10. 34, 35. 11. 18. Jehovah God eventually rejected the unfaithful nation of fleshly Israel. But his name was to continue among the new nation of spiritual Israel, the Christian congregation, even when that new nation began to embrace non-Jewish persons in its membership. Presiding at a Christian assembly in Jerusalem, the disciple James therefore spoke of God as having turned his attention to the non-Jewish nations to take out of them a people for his name. As proof that this had been foretold, James then quoted a prophecy in the book of Amos in which Jehovah's name appears. Act 15. 2, 12-14. Am 9. 11, 12. In the Christian Greek scriptures. In view of this evidence it seems most unusual to find that the extant manuscript copies of the original text of the Christian Greek scriptures do not contain the divine name in its full form. The name therefore is also absent from most translations of the so-called New Testament. Yet the name does appear in these sources in its abbreviated form at Revelation 19. 1, 3, 4, 6, in the expression Alleluia or Hallelujah KJ, Die, JB, as, RS. The call there recorded as spoken by Spirit Sons of God to praise Jah, your people. NW makes clear that the divine name was not obsolete. It was as vital and pertinent as it had been in the pre-Christian period. Why, then, the absence of its full form from the Christian Greek scriptures? Why is the divine name in its full form not in any available ancient manuscript of the Christian Greek scriptures? The argument long presented was that the inspired writers of the Christian Greek scriptures made their quotations from the Hebrew scriptures on the basis of the Septuagint, and that, since this version substituted Kyrie Middle-os or the Middle-os for the Tetragrammaton, these writers did not use the name Jehovah. As has been shown, this argument is no longer valid. Commenting on the fact that the oldest fragments of the Greek Septuagint do contain the divine name in its Hebrew form, Dr. Picard says, We now know that the Greek Bible text, the Septuagint, as far as it was written by Jews for Jews, did not translate the divine name by Kyrios, but the Tetragrammaton written with Hebrew or Greek letters was retained in such MSS manuscripts. It was the Christians who replaced the Tetragrammaton by Kyrios, when the divine name written in Hebrew letters was not understood anymore. The Chirogeneza, Oxford, 1959, p. 222. When did this change in the Greek translations of the Hebrew scriptures take place? It evidently took place in the centuries following the death of Jesus and his apostles. In Aquila's Greek version, dating from the 2nd century CE, the Tetragrammaton still appeared in Hebrew characters. Around 245 CE, the noted scholar Origen produced his Hexapla, a 6-column reproduction of the inspired Hebrew scriptures. One in their original Hebrew and Aramaic, accompanied by 2 of transliteration into Greek, and by the Greek versions of 3 Aquila, 4 Symmachus, 5 the Septuagint, and 6 Theodotion. On the evidence of the fragmentary copies now known, Professor W. G. Waddell says, in Origen's Hexapla, the Greek versions of Aquila, Symmachus, and LXX Septuagint all represented JHWH by. In the 2nd column of the Hexapla, the Tetragrammaton was written in Hebrew O textoi acute muritra longo. Jehovah 10 copies were not the early disciples of Jesus. They were persons of later centuries, when the foretold apostasy was well developed and had corrupted the purity of Christian teachings. 2th 3. 1t4. 1. Used by Jesus and his disciples. Thus, in the days of Jesus and his disciples, the divine name very definitely appeared in copies of the scriptures, both in Hebrew manuscripts and in Greek manuscripts. Did Jesus and his disciples use the divine name in speech and in writing? In view of Jesus' condemnation of Pharisaic traditions, Mount 15. 1-9, it would be highly unreasonable to conclude that Jesus and his disciples let Pharisaic ideas such as are recorded in the Mishnah govern them in this matter. Jesus' own name means Jehovah is salvation. He stated, I have come in the name of my Father. Job 5. 43. He taught his followers to pray, Our Father in the heavens, let your name be sanctified. Mount 6. 9. His works, he said, were done in the name of my Father. Job 10. 25. And, in prayer on the night of his death, he said he had made his Father's name manifest to his disciples and asked, Holy Father, watch over them on account of your own name. Job 17. 6, 11, 12, 26. In view of all of this, when Jesus quoted the Hebrew scriptures or read from them, he certainly used the divine name, Jehovah. Compare Mount 4. 4, 7, 10 with 8. 3. 6. 16. 6. 13. Also Mount 22. 37 with the 6. 5. And Mount 22. 44 with PS 110. 1. As well as Lu 4. 16-21 with ISA 61. 1, 2. Logically, Jesus' disciples, including the inspired writers of the Christian Greek scriptures, would follow his example in this. Why, then, is the name absent from the extant manuscripts of the Christian Greek scriptures, also called New Testament? Evidently because by the time those extant copies were made from the 3rd century CE onward, the original text of the writings of the apostles and disciples had been altered. Thus later copyists undoubtedly replaced the divine name in tetragrammaton form with Kyrie os in the middle os. Picture, Volume 1, p. 324. This is precisely what the facts show was done in later copies of the Septuagint translation of the Hebrew Scriptures. Restoration of the divine name in translation. Recognizing that this must have been the case, some translators have included the name Jehovah in their renderings of the Christian Greek Scriptures. The emphatic Diaglot, a 19th century translation by Benjamin Wilson, contains the name Jehovah a number of times, particularly where the Christian writers quoted from the Hebrew Scriptures. But as far back as 1533, in a translation by Anton Margaretha, the Tetragrammaton had already begun to appear in translations of the Christian Scriptures into Hebrew. Thereafter, in a variety of other such translations into Hebrew, the translators used the tetragrammaton in those places where the inspired writer quoted a passage from the Hebrew scriptures that contained the divine name. As to the properness of this course, note the following acknowledgement by R.B. Girdlestone, late Principal of Wycliffe Hall, Oxford. The statement was made before manuscript evidence came to light showing that the Greek Septuagint originally contained the name Jehovah. He said, if that Septuagint version had retained the word Jehovah, or had even used one Greek word for Jehovah and another for Adonai, such usage would doubtless have been retained in the discourses and arguments of the NT. Thus our Lord, in quoting the 110th Psalm, instead of saying, the Lord said unto my Lord, might have said, Jehovah said unto Adonai. Proceeding on this same basis, which evidence now shows to have been actual fact, he adds, supposing a Christian scholar were engaged in translating the Greek Testament into Hebrew, he would have to consider, each time the word \1 occurred, whether there was anything in the context to indicate its true Hebrew representative. And this is the difficulty o textuale acute miritra longo, Jehovah 11 early use of the name and its meaning. Exodus 3. 13-16 and 6. 3 are often misapplied to mean that Jehovah's name was first revealed to Moses sometime prior to the exodus from Egypt. True, Moses raised the question. Suppose I am now come to the sons of Israel and I do say to them, the God of your forefathers has sent me to you, and they do say to me, what is his name? What shall I say to them? But this does not mean that he or the Israelites did not know Jehovah's name. The very name of Moses' mother Jochebed means, possibly, Jehovah is glory. X 6. 20 Moses' question likely was related to the circumstances in which the sons of Israel found themselves. They has been in hard slavery for many decades with no sign of any relief. Doubt, discouragement, and weakness of faith in God's power and purpose to deliver them had very likely infiltrated their ranks. Note also as 20. 7, 8. For Moses simply to say he came in the name of God him or the sovereign Lord Adonai therefore might not have meant much to the suffering Israelites. They knew the Egyptians had their own gods and lords, and doubtless heard taunts from the Egyptians that their gods were superior to the God of the Israelites. A few of the many translations of the Christian Greek scriptures that have included the divine name Novum Testamentum Domini Nostri Isa Christi, translated by Elias Hutter Hebrew section. Published in Nuremberg. 1599. Ephesians 5. 17 The New Testament of our Lord and Saviour Jesus Christ, translated by John Eliot Massachusetts language. Published in Cambridge, Mass. 1661. Matthew 21. 9 An English version of the New Testament. From the text of the Vatican Manuscript, by Hermann Heinfetter. Published in London. 1864. Mark 12. 29, 30th Diaresis Amtliche Schriften des Neuen Testaments, translated by Johann Jakob Stolz German. Published in Zurich. 1781-1782. Romans 15. 11. Jehovah 12 Then, 2. We must keep in mind that names then had real meaning and were not just labels to identify an individual as today. Moses knew that Abram's name meaning father is high exalted was changed to Abraham meaning father of a crowd multitude, the change being made because of God's purpose concerning Abraham. So, too, the name of Sarai was changed to Sarah and that of Jacob to Israel. In each case the change revealed something fundamental and prophetic about God's purpose concerning them. Moses may well have wondered if Jehovah would now reveal himself under some new name to throw light on his purpose toward Israel. Moses going to the Israelites in the name of the one who sent him meant being the representative of that one, and the greatness of the authority with which Moses would speak would be determined by or be commensurate with that name and what it represented. Compare Acts 23. 20, 21. 1-17. 45. So, Moses' question was a meaningful one. God's reply in Hebrew was, Yashahio. Some translations render this as I am that I am. However, it is to be noted that the Hebrew verb, ha-middle-yah, from which the word a-middle-yah is drawn, does not mean simply be. Rather, it means become, or prove to be. The reference here is not to God's self-existence, but to what he has in mind to become toward others. Therefore, The New World Translation properly renders the above Hebrew expression as I shall prove to be what I shall prove to be. Jehovah thereafter added, This is what you are to say to the sons of Israel, I shall prove to be has sent me to you. X 3:14, FTN. That this meant no change in God's name, but only an additional insight into God's personality, is seen from his further words. This is what you are to say to the sons of Israel, Jehovah the God of your forefathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac and the God of Jacob, has sent me to you. This is my name to time indefinite, and this is the memorial of me to generation after generation. X 3:15. Compare PS 135. 13. Ho 12:5. The name Jehovah comes from a Hebrew verb that means to become, and a number of scholars suggest that the name means he causes to become. This definition well fits Jehovah's role as the creator of all things and the fulfiller of his purpose. Only the true God could rightly and authentically bear such a name. This aids one in understanding the sense of Jehovah's later statement to Moses. I am Jehovah. And I used to appear to Abraham, Isaac and Jacob as God Almighty, but as respects my name Jehovah I did not make myself known to them. X 6:2-3. Since the name Jehovah was used many times by those patriarchal ancestors of Moses, it is evident that God meant that he manifested himself to them in the capacity of Jehovah only in a limited way. To illustrate this, those who had known the man Abram could hardly be said to have really known him as Abraham, meaning father of a crowd multitude, while he has but one son, Ishmael. When Isaac and other sons were born and began producing offspring, the name Abraham took on greater meaning or import. So, too, the name Jehovah would now take on expanded meaning for the Israelites. To know, therefore, does not necessarily mean merely to be acquainted with or cognizant of something or someone. The foolish Nabal knew David's name but still asked, Who is David? In the sense of asking, what does he amount to? 1 Sir 25. 9-11. Compare 2 Sir 8. 13. So, too, Pharaoh had said to Moses, Who is Jehovah, so that I should obey his voice to send Israel away? I do not know Jehovah at all, and, what is more, I am not going to send Israel away. X 5:1-2. By that, Pharaoh evidently meant that he did not know Jehovah as the true God, or as having any authority over Egypt's king and his affairs, nor as having any might to enforce his will as announced by Moses and Aaron. But now Pharaoh and all Egypt, along with the Otextoi acute miritra longo, Jehovah 13. LXXXIX. 2ch. 6:33. The Imperial Bible Dictionary, Volume I, pages 856, 857. Known by the first human pair. The name Jehovah was not first revealed to Moses, for it was certainly known by the first man. The name initially appears in the divine record at Genesis 2. For after the account of God's creative works, and there it identifies the creator of the heavens and earth as Jehovah God. It is reasonable to believe that Jehovah God informed Adam of this account of creation. The Genesis record does not mention his doing so, but then neither does it explicitly say Jehovah revealed Eve's origin to the awakened Adam. Yet Adam's words upon receiving Eve show he has been informed of the way God had produced her from Adam's own body. GE 2. 21-23. Much communication undoubtedly took place between Jehovah and his earthly son that is not included in the brief account of Genesis. Eve is the first human specifically reported to have used the divine name. GE 4. 1. She obviously learned that name from her husband and head, Adam, from whom she had also learned God's command concerning the tree of the knowledge of good and bad, although, again, the record does not directly relate Adam's passing this information on to her. GE 2. 16, 17. 3. 2-3. As is shown in the article Enosh, the start that was made of calling on the name of Jehovah in the day of Adam's grandson Enosh was evidently not done in faith and in a divinely proved manner. For between Abel and Noah only Jared's son Enoch, not Enosh, is reported to have walked with the true God in faith. GE 4. 26. 5. 18, 22-24. Heb 11. 4-7. Through Noah and his family, Knowledge of the divine name survived into the post-flood period, beyond the time of the dispersion of peoples at the Tower of Babel, and was transmitted to the patriarch Abraham and his descendants. GE 9. 26. 12. 7, 8. The person identified by the name Jehovah is the creator of all things, the great first cause. Hence he is uncreated, without beginning. We 4. 11 in number, his years are beyond searching. Job 36. 26. It is impossible to place an age upon him, for there is no starting point from which to measure. Though ageless, he is properly called the Ancient of Days, since his existence stretches endlessly into the past. Dar 7. 9, 13. He is also without future end. Re 10. 6. Being incorruptible, undying. He is therefore called the King of Eternity. 21. 17. To whom 1,000 years are but as a night watch of a few hours. PS 90. 2, 4. J 10. 10. Had 1. 12. Re 15. 3. Despite his timelessness, Jehovah is preeminently a historical God, identifying himself with specific times, places, persons, and events. In his dealings with mankind he has acted according to an exact timetable. GE 15. 13, 16. 17. 21. X 12. 6-12. If 4. Because his eternal existence is undeniable and the most fundamental fact in the universe, he has sworn by it in oaths, saying, "As I am alive," thereby guaranteeing the absolute certainty of his promises and prophecies. J 22. 24. Z 2. 9. New 14. 21, 28. Isra 49. 18 men, 2, took oaths, swearing by the fact of Jehovah's existence. JG 8. 19. Root 3. 13. Only senseless ones say, "There is no Jehovah." PS 14. 1. 10. 4. Descriptions of his presence. Since he is a spirit beyond the power of humans to see. Job 4. 24. Any description of his appearance in human terms can only approximate his incomparable glory. Issa 40. 25, 26. While not actually seeing their creator. Job 1. 18. Certain of his servants were given inspired visions of his heavenly courts. Their description of his presence portrays not only great dignity and awesome majesty but also serenity, order, beauty, and pleasantness. X 24. 9-11. Issa 6. 1. As 1. 26-28. Dar 7. 9. Re 4. 1-3. See also PS 96. 4-6. As can be noted, these descriptions employ metaphors and similes, likening Jehovah's appearance to things known to humans. Jewels, fire, rainbow. He is even described as lo textoi acute miritra longo. Jehovah 14:19. 14. Man cannot successfully measure even the vast physical universe. Yet the physical heavens do not embrace or enclose the place of God's residence, and much less does some earthly house or temple. 1 Kai 8. 27. PS 148. 13. Through Moses, Jehovah specifically warned the nation of Israel not to make an image of him in the form of a male or of any kind of created thing. The 4. 15-18. So, whereas Luke's account records Jesus' reference to expelling demons by means of God's finger, Matthew's account shows that Jesus thereby referred to God's Spirit, or active force. Lu 11. 20. Mount 12. 28. Compare Job 27. 5 and GE 1. 2. Personal qualities revealed in creation. Certain facets of Jehovah's personality are revealed by his creative works even prior to his creation of man. Row 1. 20. The very act of creation reveals his love. This is because Jehovah is self-contained, lacking nothing. Hence, although he created hundreds of millions of spirit sons, not one could add anything to his knowledge or contribute some desirable quality of emotion or personality that he did not already possess in superior degree. Jar 7. 9, 10. Hob 12. 22. Issa 40. 13, 14. Row 11. 33, 34. This, of course, does not mean that Jehovah does not find pleasure in his creatures. Since man was made in God's image (Ge 1. 27, it follows that the joy a human father finds in his child, particularly one who shows filial love and acts with wisdom, reflects the joy that Jehovah finds in his intelligent creatures who love and wisely serve him. PR 27. 11. Mount 3. 17. 12. 18. This pleasure comes, not from any material or physical gain, but from seeing his creatures willingly hold to his righteous standards and show unselfishness and generosity. 1 Ch 29. 14-17. PS 50. 7-15. 147. 10, 11. Heb 13. 16. Contrariwise, those who take the wrong course and show contempt for Jehovah's love, who bring reproach on his name and cruel suffering to others, cause Jehovah to feel hurt at his heart. Ge 6. 5-8. PS 78. 36-41. Heb 10. 38. Jehovah also finds pleasure in the exercise of his powers, whether in creation or otherwise, his works always having a real purpose and a good motive. PS 135. 3-6. Isra 46. 10, 11. 55. 10, 11. As the generous giver of every good gift and every perfect present, he takes delight in rewarding his faithful sons and daughters with blessings. Ches 1. 5, 17. PS 35. 27. 84. 11, 12. 149. For yet, though he is a God of warmth and feeling, his happiness is clearly not dependent upon his creatures, nor does he sacrifice righteous principles for sentimentality. Jehovah also showed love in granting his first created spirit son the privilege of sharing with him in all further works of creation, both spirit and material, generously causing this fact to be made known with resultant honor to his son. Ge 1. 26. Col 1. 15-17. He thus did not weakly fear the possibility of competition but, rather, displayed complete confidence in his own rightful sovereignty. X 15. 11. As well as in his son's loyalty and devotion. He allows his spirit sons relative freedom in the discharge of their duties, on occasion even permitting them to offer their views on how they might carry out particular assignments. 1 Chi 22. 19-22. As the Apostle Paul pointed out, Jehovah's invisible qualities are also revealed in his material creation. Row 1. 19, 20. His vast power is staggering to the imagination, huge galaxies of billions of stars being but the work of his fingers. PS 8. 1, 3, 4. 19. 1. And the richness of his wisdom displayed is such that, even after thousands of years of research and study, the understanding that men have of the physical creation is but a whisper compared with mighty thunder. Job 26. 14. PS 92. 5. EC 3. 11. Jehovah's creative activity toward the planet Earth was marked by logical orderliness, following a definite program. Ge 1. 2-31, making the Earth, as astronauts in the 20th century called it, a jewel in space. O textoi acute miritra longo, Jehovah 15. Pleasantness at your right hand forever. PS 16. 8, 11. Having been the object of so much love, Adam and Eve should certainly have known that God is love, the source and supreme example of love. 1 Job 4. 16, 19. Most important, Jehovah God supplied man's spiritual needs. Adam's father revealed himself to his human son, communicating with him, giving him divine assignments of service, the obedient performance of which would constitute a major part of man's worship. Ge 1. 27-30. 2. 15-17. Compare Am 4. 13. A God of moral standards. Man early came to know Jehovah not merely as a wise and bountiful provider, but also as a God of morals, one holding to definite standards as to what is right and what is wrong in conduct and practice. If, as indicated, Adam knew the account of creation, then he also knew Jehovah had divine standards, for the account says of his creative works that Jehovah saw that it was very good, hence meeting his perfect standard. Ge 1. 3, 4, 12, 25, 31. Compared to 32. 3, 4. Without standards there could be no means for determining or